हम लोग समय का इंतजार करते हैं, सब लोग मैम के लिए दिन का भी इंतजार करते हैं और 7 बजे का भी इंतजार करते हैं।
की बहुत बहुत अनुकंपा है।
नहीं, आपकी अनुकंपा है सबके प्रति। ये आपने अपने पूरे जीवन का जो परिश्रम है बड़ी इतने आसानी से सबको बांट दिया है। तो सभी कला प्रेमियों को मैं नमस्कार कर रहा हूँ। अभी हमारा 1 मिनट बाकी है। अभी हमारे यहाँ तत्वार सूत्र का जो वर्कशॉप चल रहा है उसके पार्टिसिपेंट भी इसमें जुड़ गए हैं अभी बीच में। तो हमने खुद इसका जो रजिस्ट्रेशन है वो ओपन कर दिया था।
ओके।
कि कुछ लोग अगर अभी भी जैसे ये लोग अपने मित्रों से कह सकते हैं कि अभी हमारे यहाँ 5 लेक्चर जो बाकी है तो उसमें वो लोग अपना जोड़ सकते हैं
जरूर।
क्योंकि हमारा उद्देश्य ही है कि अधिक से अधिक लोग इससे लाभान्वित हों।
बिल्कुल।
इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ में फिर से सभी अपने कला प्रेमियों का सादर अभिनंदन करता हूँ और अपने मैम का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ। जैसा कि आप लोगों को ज्ञात है कि आज हमारा ये चोलकालीन जो मंदिरों की पद्धति है उस पर हम लोग देखेंगे और विचार करेंगे। इनका समय हम लोगों ने देखा है कि ये लगभग ईस्वी के 900 से 1150 का ऐसा माना जाता है और दक्षिण भारत में इनका बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण स्थान है क्योंकि दक्षिण भारत में जब पल्लव शासन का ह्रास हो जाने पर चोल वंश का उदय हुआ था। 9वीं सदी के पश्चात चोल राजा 200 वर्षों तक शासन करते रहे। इनका प्रभाव दक्षिण के साथ उत्तर भारत की गंगा घाटी तथा दक्षिण में लंका द्वीप तक विस्तृत हुआ। भारत के पूर्वी समुद्र किनारे पर इनकी शक्ति का अत्यधिक विस्तार हुआ। इसी कारण मद्रास के पूर्वी समुद्र तट को चोल मंडल कहा जाता है। इसे अंग्रेजी में कारो मंडल भी कहा गया। इनकी सामुद्रिक शक्ति का विकास इतना अधिक हुआ कि चोल नरेशों ने बर्मा, मलाया के भूभाग और एशिया के दक्षिण पूर्वी द्वीप समूह को अपनी शक्ति द्वारा प्रभावित किया। उस शक्तिशाली साम्राज्य में अनेक भव्य एवं विशाल मंदिर तैयार किए गए जो दक्षिण की द्राविड़ शैली के सर्वोत्तम उदाहरण उपस्थित करते हैं और स्थापत्य कला के अद्भुत नमूने हैं। आज हम उनका दर्शन करेंगे और जैसा कि हमारी परंपरा है कि सबसे पहले इस कार्यक्रम के जो हमारे मूल सूत्रधार हैं, संकल्पना है जिनकी, देवी सहाय का हम अभिनंदन करते हैं। साथ ही इस कार्यक्रम के प्रायोजक श्री राजकुमार जी ओसवाल परिवार, श्री निर्मल भोगीलाल मुंबई, श्री स्मृति शेष धनेश जी का परिवार और मातु श्री राजकुमारी सुमेर चंद जी परिवार के प्रति भी कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हैं और हार्दिक अभिनंदन करते हैं और मैम का भी सभी लोगों की तरफ से हार्दिक स्वागत करते हुए यह मंच उनको देते हैं कि वो अपने वक्तव्य के द्वारा और अपने द्वारा चित्रों के द्वारा हम सबको उपकृत करें। मैडम, आपका हार्दिक स्वागत है।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। Okay, welcome back. Yes, very interesting topic today. I think Chol period temples are, I will not even say one of the best. I think they are the best from South India. So we are all going to look at them. And when we talk about Dravid temples, mainly the Radishwara Temple, Thanjavur. Actually, it encompasses all that Dravid temples are about. When we talk about a typical Dravid temple, just as we take example of Lakshman Temple from Khajuraho, when we are talking about the Nagar Temple, it kind of represents every element of Nagar Temple. Similarly, when we talk about Radishwara Temple at Thanjavur, it kind of represents the Dravid temple in totality. So that's what we are going to look at today. So, okay, let me share my screen. Right, now this is better. Everybody can see. So when we are looking at the map, this blue line talks about the trade routes. This is entire Chola Empire that we are looking at. This is the small portion here is Sri Lanka. And then the pink portion is the Chola influence that we are looking at. As Professor Jain just said, it goes right up till this area, the, Pala period, Pala territory, Bengal, Odisha, Kalinga here, and then entire this area was under the sway of the Cholas and this. And then these Southeast Asian islands, all of them, you can see Sri Vijay, all these, the island, today's. And then it doesn't stop here. It goes right up till the trade routes are going up till the China. So the Cholas had won over Sri Lanka and in fact Polunaruva. This part, this one, the eastern part, that was supposed to be the capital of the Cholas in Sri Lanka. And they had their sway right up till Malaysia, Indonesia, and embassy in China. So the Chol dynasty was, of course, from South India, we all know that, and one of the longest ruling dynasties that we have in the world history, it is said. The earliest datable reference of the Chol are from the Mauryan period, inscriptions which are dated to 3rd century BC, from Ashokan time, right? And as one of the most, 3 crowned kings of the Tamilkam, along with the Cheras and the Pandyas. In fact, the dynasty continued to govern over varying territories till the 13th century. And the Chola Empire, in fact, was at its peak, as Professor Justo, addressed, that it was at its peak and achieved, imperialism, in fact, I would say, under the medieval Cholas, Rajarajeshwara Chola, Rajendra Chola, in the mid 9th century CE. Okay. So this is the early Chola temple that we are looking at. Relatively, they used to be small, but they were superb in their simplicity, right? 9th century temple we are looking at Narthamalai, also known as the Rajarajeshwara Temple at Narthamalai. Okay. So, of course, freestanding, facing earlier rock-cut caves, dominating a landscape of rice fields, etc., from the perch on a hillside, that it is. Okay. And this is, of course, the basement molding that you're seeing. So relatively simpler. You don't have the niches here, you can see. We've seen such elaborate temples earlier. So very, very simple construction that you can see here, right? And when you are looking at this particular sculpture also, there is some kind of, you see the torsion in the body, I'm not very comfortable with. Here it is almost frontal, whereas this portion almost as if it is, in profile. So there is some kind of ambiguity in this. So I think the whole rendition of this sculpture is still tentative. And whereas when we reach the later period, we will see such beautiful sculptures we come across in the later period. Yeah. So first medieval king, this is the temple that I was showing you, Vijayalaya Chola, in the 9th century near Trichy. And then later royal Cholas have 11th century onwards from here. And the most influential kings that we have are these Rajaraja I and his son Rajendra I. And then, of course, we have the later Cholas, Rajaraja II. Okay. So the typical features of this period that I'm talking about, it will have a central shrine with a very, very tall Viman in a pyramidal shape, which is a typical feature. Approach through one or more, halls, having flat roof depending on the size of the temple. Then it has a surrounding courtyard with a cloister wall with smaller shrines. Then Gopuras, elaborate gateways, it all reflects the style of the Viman, and an increasing emphasis as a case we see in the later temples where the Gopura become taller and taller, as we see in the temples of Madurai and Srirangam, right? Stone sculptures, are largely used as an adjunct to the architecture, because these sculptures are also very, very important in niches or as decorative motifs also in friezes and ornamentation of pillars, balustrades, etc. But also another very important feature is that of very excellent bronze sculptures. We see images of deities, donors, saint poets of Bhakti movement, the Nainamars, the Alvars, etc. So these are some of the main features we find during this period. Okay. So first, of course, we are going to look at the beautiful Thanjavur Temple, the Brihadishwara Temple. Thanjavur actually is located at the head of the Kaveri River, right? We often hear the Kaveri dispute these days between the two different states. So that's where it is. And yeah, also the favored capital of Cholas, I would say, Thanjavur, okay, 10th to 12th century, that was. Then Naikas, they ruled from the same place in 16th century, and then the Marathas. In fact, one of the gateways we come across in Thanjavur temple also was built by Maratha, the outer ones, 17th to 18th century. That's where the Marathas ruled, right? So, in fact, it's a city of temples. As I said that about Bhubaneswar, Thanjavur is again a city of temples which contains over 90 temples. So Radishwara, also known as the Rajarajeshwara, after its founder, the Rajaraja Chola one. Okay, so as I have often, brought this out, that many a times the very temple or the deity inside also is known by the name of the king who actually was responsible for the making of this. So it was actually built around 1000 or in the very, very early 11th century, 1003, right? Between 1003 to 1010, this was built. It is the greatest of all Chola temples and was one of the largest structures in the world at that time, it is said. It is 14-storied, yeah, very, very tall Viman. Here it has very tall tower and is about 66 meters, right? Or 200 feet tall, we call it, broken into 14 stories. The temple is, of course, dedicated to none other than Shiva. Okay, so here you can see the grandeur or the ascent of the temple very, very beautifully. So it is a totally mesmerizing experience, when you are standing in front of Radishwara Temple. It kind of evokes multiple emotions and has a lot to offer. And it has magnificent architecture, sculptures, paintings, dance, music, drama, literature, all encompassed, singularly, all signaling, in fact, at the highly developed religious, social, political, and cultural fabric of that particular period. And it is actually difficult not to wonder if at the very multifaceted personality of the then king, the Rajaraja Chola that time, right? In fact, so magnificent the temple, the structure is that it came to be known as the Dakshin Meru. You can, clearly see, it almost looks like a mythical mountain, Meru. Dakshin Meru, because Meru, we always, have this vision of Meru being located in the north. So known as the Dakshin Meru, the Meru mountain of the south or the great temple. Okay. Yeah. So this is, of course, a very beautiful sculpture of Rajaraj Chola we have. So there is a, small incident I wanted to, share with you. So it was said that as the construction was progressing, of making of the temple, the chief sthapati or the architect actually, he is, concentrating in his block and, he kind of stretches his arm for a betel leaf, yeah, to be provided by one of his attendants who was actually not there. So in fact, the king Rajaraj Chola I, he himself was present there, and not to disturb the sthapati, he actually hands over and the betel leaf on the leaf of the on the hands of the sthapati or the architect, okay, ignoring his status or any kind of hierarchical consideration at that time. So this was the zeal of the king for this Shiva's edifice, for that matter. And also, many historians have, talked a lot about this temple. James Ferguson, we all know, we always call him the main person who actually started the studies of temple architecture in India. So in fact, today also we follow many things that he had kind of explained at that time, so many years back in the earlier centuries. Okay. So his, saying was that Chola artists always conceived like giants and they finished like jewelers. So can you imagine how beautiful this comment is from such a great historians? Yeah, because the enormity of the size of the temple, but at the same time, the intricacy of the carving, etc., it almost feels like as if jewelers have been working on it, right? So there are different names that are given to this temple, the Dakshin Meru, the Rajarajeshwara Kovil. Kovil is the name, another name for temple in South India. The Advalana, which is also, one who can dance very well, right? So this is what the different names that are given to. So this is a bronze sculpture we have of Rajarajeshwara who consecrated the temple himself, yeah. Yeah, so bronze sculpture, mainly copper, tin, zinc, gold, and silver. So mostly panch dhatu, and later on, of course, gold, silver were not such an intrinsic part of the bronze sculptures that we have. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so this is basically the plan. You can easily see here the gateway here. So in fact, there are another gateway. You have one this side and one. Then this is the Nandi Mandapam. You are entering from east side. This is one Mandapam, then another pillared Mandapam, the Garbhagriha here, the cloistered wall here with subsidiary shrines. And there are additional shrines that you can see here. And Dhwaj here, etc. Okay, this is another shrine that you get. So by now, I think we are pretty much familiar in, reading of the map. So it consists of this pillared porch that you can see inside here, which was actually added much later. Mukh Mandap, Ardh Mandap, all these, and Antaral here, vestibule, right? And you have an inner circumambulation. You can clearly see this is the gap, right? You are entering here. These are the walls of the Garbhagriha, yeah, inner walls, and these are the outer walls. So it almost appears as if it is a Sarvodbhadra. And now also, if you go and visit the temple, there are almost 3 gateways in all 3 sides, as if you can enter, but they are all closed. And also they are much at a height. So probably they were not designed for, actual entry inside the temple, right? Okay. And there are these subsidiary shrines. Devi's shrine is there, Subramaniam shrine, Ganesh, Nataraj, Chandikeshwara. This is the shrine of Chandikeshwara, etc. Baby. And this is the elevation of the temple that you can see very clearly. Yeah. Okay. So the temple is constructed of granite, mostly of large blocks, a rock which is not available in the neighborhood, and therefore had to be brought from a distance itself, which was a very, very huge or colossal task. And it took 12 years for this temple to get completed, the construction of this temple, and is the, of course, tallest in South India. Though Rajaraja did not live to see its completion, the temple is surrounded by the prakara, which I showed you in the last slide. Okay. And on the wall, you will find seated Nandi all along. We have seen in earlier temples like the Ellora temple, or in Kanchipuram temple, the Kailashnath temple, etc. Okay. So, and 108 in all around it. And so there is a vast courtyard also, which is there and is surrounded by pillared cloister. So here you can very clearly see this very typical feature of Dravidian temples, very flat roof of the adjoining, or the axial elements, the mandapam, ardhamandapam, mukmandapam, they don't have any kind of superstructure, and mostly they'll be pillared halls, right? So from here you can clearly see the Garbhagriha actually has 2 stories. You can actually go up here also, right? And there are beautiful paintings and sculptures on these walls also, if you go up here. So of course, there is some restoration work which was going on last time. So probably now, if you go visit, you can go up to this level also. So this is the section of the temple that I'm trying to show you. And the beautiful shikhar here you can see, yeah, 8-sided octagonal. And here you can clearly see Nandi seated, facing each other here on the top. And these different levels, here you can clearly see the kutas, the shalas, the shala here at every level, starting from here, the kuta, the shala, the panjara in between. Yeah. So from here, you can easily make out how the entire Viman is rising in an ascending order. Okay. So at the entrance, there are 2 Gopuras. As I told you, this is the one. This is the shorter one, but much ornate. And they are kind of widely separated from each other. The first, this one is a little higher, but this is much better decorated, I would say. So although the lower portion, this portion of both the Gopuras, it's made up of a stone. The upper stone is that of brick, and this actually combination becomes a norm in later temples also in the South Indian Gopuram architecture, where most of the temples you will find this kind of construction. The lower portion is that of stone and the upper portion of brick and mortar. And here you can see the Nandi Mandapam. So this is where we are entering from. Yeah. So these are the 2 Gopura that I wanted you to look at. This is the outer one and this is the inside one. So the exterior of the gateways are very elaborately pilastered and elaborately decorated with niches, sculptures, illustrate all the Shaivite stories like the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, Shiva protecting Markandeya, Arjuna winning the Pashupata weapons, all these things that you can see. And you can see these larger than life Dwar Palace, again, a very typical feature of South Indian temples, almost, coming down on you. Here you can see very clearly the 2 Dwar Palace and this the niches of the Dwar Palace here. So up till this structure, it is all stone, and then this is the portion which is made of brick and mortar. Okay. So unlike the later practice in southern India, these Gopuras are very small. All right. If we go to Meenakshi Temple, or if we go to the Srirangam, all right, that's where you see such huge Gopuras that, they almost, not only almost, they overshadow the shrine which is there inside, right? And in fact, these pair of monumental Dwar Palace actually always flank the stairways, and not only stairways, in fact, most of the time at every entrance, whether it is Mandapam, Antaral or Garbhagriha, at every entrance you will find them. All right. And in fact, they are almost 2.5 times human size, and each stand like with one leg thrust across the body like this in almost a challenging, way. and they are four-armed. All right. So because they are Shiv Dwar Palace, so they also have imbued those kind of I would say Devic characters. So they are shown, four-armed. There are fangs that are there, heavier body. This actually they strike a lot of terror with their, knit eyebrows, wide eyes, right? And hands always in a Tarjani Mudra, in a challenge, threatening, and Vismay also sometimes, attitude. So these Dwarpalas are, as I said, repeated at many places throughout the temple, near all the entrances. And these Chandrashalas also have these flame-like characters, which I showed you last time in the, the Bantisri temple, Angkor Wat, etc. You always get this. So this kind of influence, we can clearly see how it is traveling from India to these other countries also. Yeah. So this is, of course, the Nandi Mandapam and the entrance Gopuram that you can see here at the back. As we are entering, this is the open hall Nandi Mandapam, and we are looking, this is from view from the courtyard. So the decorated Nandi Pavilion is, of course, of much later date, 16th century. Probably earlier there was a Nandi Pavilion, but probably not of this size. So you can see these paintings, which are much, much later. All right. So most Shiva temples and shrines have, an associated sculpture of Nandi, in fact. Yeah, so this is the one that we have here. In fact, it is aligned on the, alongside the two Gopuras on the east and within the compound, right? Nandi is there in black stone that we can see here. And huge Nandi, this is only, the size is only next to the, if any of you have seen the Lepakshi Nandi, which is the largest in size in all of India. And this, we say that it is only next to that, okay. And in fact, the Nandi shrine belongs to the Vijayanagar period, as I said, much, much later. And it is kneeling, facing the main sanctum, the Garbhagriha, all right, the westward, it is which is normally the practice, okay. 6 meters long and 2.5 meters wide. I mean, such huge dimensions. Okay. So this is the east entrance, very late addition that it is, around 16th to 17th century entry porch, which has this overhanging eave and engaged colonnades. So these colonnades or pillarets, as we call them, this is typical Vijayanagar style. I will show you later when we arrive there, where one pillar itself is broken into smaller parts, like smaller pillars. If you go to Hampi area, you will often encounter these kind of pillars. Okay. Okay, so this is the entrance which leads us to the inner shrine. Okay. So the very typical, feature of Rajarajeshwara Temple is number one, the deeply carved Yali friezes or the Vyala figures that we have here at the base of the temple, which is, these lengthy inscriptions which are carved. In actually no other historical monument one finds such a detailed account of the activities of the temple engraved on stone for posterity. Like these are Tamil inscriptions and written 1,000 years back, more than 1,000 years back. So as per the inscriptions, the installation ceremony was done on the 20th day of the 26th year, that is 1011 CE, by the king and his son Rajendra Chola I. The endowments, together with all the mention of even small weights and measures, the custom, the method of receiving, maintaining and paying amounts or interest on amounts or donation for the, conduct of regular puja or a special item of worship or for burning of lamp or similar details. All this is inscribed on, in the form of these inscriptions. Cooks, gardeners, flower gatherers, garland makers, musicians, dancers, drummers, dance masters, wood carvers, sculptors, painters, you name, and, the singing, the choir groups, accountants, watchmen, I mean, host of all the other officials and servants of the temple, all are endowed with adequate grant of land. This is what is written here. And it also says that Rajaraja, in fact, constructed 2 long streets just for the accommodation of 400 dancing women who were attached to the temple. So such lengthy and, in detail, these inscriptions, and which actually tell us so much about the social fabric of that time. Yeah. So, yeah. So this is, again, I'm showing you the same thing that we just saw earlier, right? It kind of gives us a very vivid idea of that time period. Yeah. So of course, now we are this is the rise of the Viman, or and here you can see we are seeing it from the side view here, right? Okay. 60 meters high, this I told you earlier, 14 stories, and actually classified as the Uttam Viman, as we call it. It has all the necessary features of a good superstructure that we can get. And at the crest, at the helm, we have there's a spire here at the, and this particular single stone, in fact, it is said that it is almost so heavy that to carry it up, there was a huge, what do you say, a ramp which was actually constructed for this stone to get transported to this particular height. Okay. So this is the position of the different sculptures that we have, the Devkoshtas, or the niches as we call them. So this is, of course, the Antaral, and I can also share with you this very nicely. It is all written number-wise, all the different murtis that we get here. So if we are entering from this side, this is the southern side. So southern side will always have Dakshin Murti, as I have told you. The very name suggests, Dakshin Murti. On the west side, you will normally have the Lingodbhav Shiva. Normally, this is the Lingodbhav Shiva, Then this side, you will normally have a Devi shrine also. And here also Ganesh, when you are entering on the southern side, or here you will find Gajalakshmi, Ganesh, etc., etc. So these are this is the location of all the different images. So a very important feature of this temple is the depiction of Tripurantaka. We have spoken about Tripurantaka. So there are 30 representations of Shiva in the form of Tripurantaka, the destroyer of the 3 cities that we've spoken about, form in which he kind of vanquishes the 3 powerful demons by destroying these 3 citadels with a single arrow, right? So normally this particular aspect of Shiva will be shown with a bow and arrow, right? So the popularity of this theme at the temple also suggests that it had a special importance, right, to Rajaraja I, and may have served as a symbol of his military strength also, and imperial authority, right? So the Cholas actually being great warriors and conquerors, and Rajaraja being the greatest of all, it is in the, very fitness of things, I would say, that the very theme of Tripurantaka, the mighty warrior god, is kind of glorified here, virtually as the keynote of the Chola power here, right? So this is actually a very beautiful Tripurantaka image. This is not there in this temple. Okay, please do not confuse. This I just wanted to show you. So the 5-headed Tripurantaka here, you can very clearly see, is seen pointing an arrow. Here, this is the arrow that is pointing towards the Tripura, the 3 cities here. It is a very literal translation into sculpture, what the iconography Tripurantaka is. So here the 3 cities, you can clearly see the 3 demons residing inside. Yeah, with the with this bow, which is made of Mount Meru. Here you can see the Mount Meru bow, which it is made of. The serpent Vasuki is seen as the string right here. Do you see this? That's the string. The four-headed god Brahma is the charioteer here. You can see that, right? And moon and sun as the wheels of the chariot. Yeah, so this is the iconography of Tripurantaka, which you will normally encounter. We saw this in many temples earlier also. Then these are also some other sculptures. We have Shiva Bhikshatana on the south wall of the temple. So now you can easily make out how that fluidity of the sculptures, how well it is coming across at this time, right? And these are the Dev Koshthas that we speak about, the Yali figures at the base, the inscriptions here. Yeah. And most of the time in these adjoining minor niches, you will find smaller sculptures which are also related to the main sculpture here, most of the time here. And this, all these torrents that I have already spoken about, they are bhitti torrents, they are not emerging out from the walls as we have seen in North Indian temples, right? Okay. So Bhikshatana Shiva, we know the wandering ascetic, without any clothes, etc. Then this is the south wall, of course, of the Radishwara Temple. The west end of the south wall, I would say, with paired sculptures of Shiva here. The Nataraja Shiva here, you have here, and the Kalantaka Shiva, destroyer of the death. I told you about this story also earlier. Yeah. So these are called the Kumbha pillars, yeah, because there are these pots at the base that you can see here. So every surface of this temple is very, very well carved, I would say that. Ardhanarishwara, we have already spoken about at great length. So half part of the sculpture is male and the other part is female. The Lingodbhav Murti, of course, is an iconic representation of Shiva installed in the rear portion, the west portion. And this is Lakshmi in the Mahamandapa. These are, of course, the fierce-looking Dwar Palace. So again, as I said, see, it could easily have been a door, but these are blind niches now. You cannot enter from here. And there does not seem to be any entrance that you can get into the temple from the western side or north and southern side. So although it is by way of niches and the openings, you can see that it could have been a Sarvodbhadra, but it is not. Yeah. This is, of course, the Pranala. You can easily see in the form of a Yakshaya. Probably he has some kind of a music instrument which is blowing. Yeah. Shiva and Parvati, Alingan Mudra. Then Harihara image you have. So, so many times you will find some kind of, sometimes some color remnants also on these sculptures, which goes to tell us that all these sculptures were at one time beautifully painted also. We saw that in Kanchipuram temple also earlier. No? Okay. Devi, Lakshmi. So, of course, the top I wanted to show you, 25 tons. You can easily, make out how heavy it would have been, and octagonal rests on a single, block of granite weighing almost 80 tons. So here you can see a dorsed Nandi seated in all the four corners, 8-sided, this, and the Kirti Mukhas at top, these, flaring Chandrashalas at the top. So this is also called a high temple or Alp Viman, in other words. Yeah. Okay. So actually there were many paintings which were discovered later and of Chola time, because they had a, upper layer of the Nayaka period paintings. And it was much later that by accident they were discovered. So when we get into the Garbhagriha, right? So Garbhagriha actually has, very on the walls, very, very beautiful sculptures which are, colored like this. And Shiva, you have Shiva in different forms there. The northern Natesha and Lalita Tandav, he's wearing this, mekhla, very, very beautiful hip band, which is called, and which is typical of this period in the, as a dancing costume. This was very important, yeah. So these are some of the paintings that we found from Chola period, much, much later, which was, they were hidden underneath the Nayaka period. So the palette of the paintings actually include primarily all the earthen or mineral colors, almost relating to the earlier period of Ajanta, I would say. Very, very soft and subdued. The lines are firm, very sinewy lines, right? And look at a very delicate rendition, I would say that, yeah. So Rajarajeshwara I was a very, very, had a sacred passion for the art of dance and music. In fact, it is said that the Tevarams, the sacred hymns of the Shaivite Nainamars, would never have been, I mean, he was instrumental in actually bringing these palm leaf manuscripts, right, which were actually slowly disintegrating in a cell at the Chidambaram temple, which was, I mean, not known to anybody. In fact, he salvaged all those from there, and it is quite natural that he kind of arranged to have them sung in this temple all year round, right? These are also some more paintings. Then there are, when you go to the upper level, there are actually, we know in Natya Shastra, there are 108 karnas, the dance poses as per the Bharat's Natya Shastra. So 81 of these karnas are carved all around the inner walls of the first floor of the temple, where Shiva himself has been depicted as, as dancer, right? And in fact, they form an very, very, I would say, invaluable document in the history of Indian art, and are, in fact, they are predecessors to the labeled dance poses we find at the Chidambaram temple, which we will see very soon. So this is, of course, the north side colonnade that we have with the Chandikeshwara temple here, shrine on the side here, very beautiful off to the left. The colonnade, in fact, is built along with the enclosure wall, which normally is the practice. The back wall of these shrines is, it's the prakara or the boundary wall. And here you can see 108 Nandis which are seated all along the prakara or the boundary wall. So these are some of the subsidiary shrines that we have. Of course, many shrines are there. This is the cloistered veranda. At the end of this, here you have all the subsidiary shrines. And along with that, we have very many other 5-6 shrines inside also. So Devi shrine, Subramaniam, Ganesh, Nataraj, Chandikeshwara, etc., etc. Okay. There is a shrine of Navgrahas also, or the 9 planetary deities in the shape of the lingas. 108 lingas are also there, and the figures of the guardians of 8 direction. That's also one shrine we have in the cloistered veranda. And of course, on the walls we have 64 leelas of Shiva, or the divine plays of Shiva, which are depicted. Okay. So temples of the Devi is near the Nandi Mandapam, and Subramaniam are, later addition that I will talk about when we come to the period where they were constructed. Sorry. Yeah. The Subramaniam temple was constructed during Nayak period. Yeah. So this is the small Chandikeshwara shrine I wanted to show you. On right is the main temple. This side you can see the main temple, and it is always on the northern side, all right, on the back of the Eastern Gopuram. This is the back of the Eastern Gopuram we can see. And this is the Chandikeshwaran shrine. So this is Chandeshwara is the meditating yogi and Nainamar of Bhakti movement, all right, saint. And also another thing which is popular about this is in a Shiva temple, when you're coming out, you're normally doing like this, because he's also supposed to be the guardian of the Shiva temple, that nobody's, kind of taking away anything from the temple. So this is normally the practice, that you come out of the Shiva temple and along the Chandikeshwar shrine, you are doing this. Okay. So this is a separate Ganesh shrine with the temple corridor you can see at the back here. And this is the entrance. Yes. So this is the Subramaniam shrine in the north part of the courtyard, also called Murugan, Kartikeya or Skanda, same name of the same god. The shrine actually faces south, and it is almost a reduced copy of the Radishwara Temple itself. So, and of course, it was made much later. It is not the original original edifice of at the time of the Radishwara. So in conclusion, we can say that Radishwara, the great temple, is as much about the king as the god, because it also displays many, many qualities of the king who was instrumental in the making of this. So the temple, in fact, in other words, was like a metropolitan community, which served as the very center of the redistribution of wealth and kind of integration of Chola kingdom, I would say that. Yeah. So the next temple that we will talk about is the Gangaikunda Cholapuram or Gangaikunda Choleshwara Temple. So the story of this great Radishwara temple at Thanjavur will be incomplete if we don't talk about or we don't mention the temple that was built by his son, Rajendra Chola, son of Rajaraja I. Equally brilliant, and in fact, he was the greatest ruler of his time. After, in fact, asserting his power in Sri Lanka, Chera and Pandya courts, etc. In fact, and South Asia also, Southeast Asia, he conquered the northeastern part of India also and brought waters, literally brought waters of holy Ganga from the, it did say by the might of his arm. I mean, he was not carrying it physically, but because he won over all those areas. So to celebrate this, his triumph, all right, he created the very city of Gangaikunda Cholapuram, right? Or if we translate this, it means the bringer of the Ganga in the city of Chola. So Gangaikunda Cholapuram, right? So where he constructed a very huge tank, and it was filled with holy water of the Ganga. Alongside, he erected a large temple of Shiva and also called it Radishwara on the lines of his father, only much smaller in scale and almost I would say, feminine version of it. The water, in fact, from the tank was brought for the daily abhishek of the deity at that time also. Now, if you are looking at this, it's almost the same plan, the flat, the mandapam here, the little superstructure at the antral, and the same pyramidal shape, but it kind of curves little bit inside. So by way of that, you can easily distinguish between the two temples. Now here it is much, much easily visible, this kind of a curve, which was not there in the Radishwara temple. Built in the same style, in fact. The main difference is that of the Viman only, which is inwardly carved rather than the straight profile that we have in Thanjavur. All right. So the Cholas almost attained, very, very affluent, it was affluent state at that time. Very increased elaboration, larger in plan, smaller in height. This is what we have. The sculptures, in fact, at Gangaikunda Cholapuram temple, some people, say that they are even better than the Radishwara temple. So in fact, there is a very immense, enclosure wall also. It is said that probably it was designed for the for defense purpose also. And there are bastions at, the southeast and the west wall also. Okay. So this is a very popular sculpture that we have from this temple, Chandesh Anugra Murti in northern Devakoshtha. So Shiva's power to, grant grace to devotees is called Anugra. We have seen Ravana Anugra Murti also earlier. So similarly, this is the Chandesh Anugra Murti. In this case, he grants favor to the young boy named Chandesha, and therefore this form of Shiva is called the Chandesh Anugra Murti. So in this relief, Shiva is also accompanied by Parvati, you can see, places kind of a wreath, symbolizing victory atop the head of a small boy here. So it has been also suggested that it may also refer to the victories of Rajendra Chola through the grace of Shiva. So many a times we have seen that by through the sculptural language, so many times the king is trying to represent himself. Yeah. And these are, of course, some more sculptures. We have the Nataraja, the Bharava, and you can clearly see some colors also, which are still present here. The Gajalakshmi, you can see the Ardhanarishwar figure. Yeah. Then we have another temple in the area, Erateshwara Temple, Damasuram. I'm all talking about, all these temples are very closely, situated. Thanjavur, then you have Gangaikunda Cholapuram, then Damasuram, Kumbakonam. All these have very, very beautiful temples, built by Rajendra Chola too, much later. Great Living Chola Temple, of course, UNESCO World Heritage Site. Earlier ones also, it is so obvious that I did not mention about them. In fact, it was built by the Cholas between the 10th and 12th centuries and have, again, a lot of similarities. And here you can see something very different here. Wheel is there and these balustrades, there are elephants here. So the mandapam actually is kind of made in the shape of a chariot, right? Or a ratham, pillared mandapam inside you can see. So of course, this almost harks back to the images that we have seen at Konark Temple, but much, much smaller in scale and not that elaborately carved as we saw in the Konark Temple. Konark Temple, the entire temple was shaped in the form of a ratha, but not here. It's just the mandapam that we have. And this is, of course, the detail of that. So, but it's not, still the horses here that you see are pretty much, they give good competition to the Konark horses that we saw. The wheels, though very well carved, very many spokes we have. In Konark Temple, there was a definite number and they denoted definite idea, right? Because it was a sun temple and about the days, the number of hours in a day, number of days in a week, all that was corresponding to the different spokes and the number of wheels, etc., number of horses. Yeah. So then these are some of the sculptures we have in this particular temple. Then this device is very commonly used in South Indian temples more so. We find them in North Indian temples also, where you have one face and multiple bodies. Now you can, if you're seeing it from this side, you feel it's a bull. So look at the hump of the bull here. And if you're looking it from this side, it will appear to you as an elephant, right? So this is a small trickery that the sculptors will play. And similarly here you can see with one face, you can see probably there are multiple bodies. There's a lady who's kind of, her legs are in the air and here you can see her, or you can see from this side also, or you can see her as this. So there are three women with one torso that you can see. So this kind of display of, sculptural detail is very, very common in South India. And yeah. Now I'm going to show you some more temples. Yeah. The Chidambaram temple, where it is said that Shiva himself actually performed his dance, right? So that's what Chidambaram temple is famous for. Huge, 55 acres, consists of series of 4 prakara walls. You can see different boundary walls here, and these elaborate gateways, or the Gopura. Although they do not correspond in, in the position, right? They are not exactly opposite each other, probably because these, prakara walls were made at different times and by different rulers. And that's how the positioning of these are kind of not symmetrical. Also, by now, you can see the trend of having these very, very high gopuras. So the temple, in fact, almost becomes very, very dwarfish inside when you see these, such elaborate gopuras all along, right? Okay. And there is a Pushkarni here that you can see. And there are various temples that you have inside. So this is actually a very simple layout plan of the temple here. Chit Sabha with golden roof, Kanak Sabha, the 4 Gopuras, Nritya Sabha, Dev Sabha, 1,000-pillared hall or Raj Sabha. So Shrine of Mulsthana Lingam this is actually as if this was the original temple. The Shiva Linga was originally present here. All right. And that's why many things you will find in the temple are oriented towards this particular space, right? Okay. So the entrance also you will have from here. Of course, this is the later entrance that was designed later. And this, of course, is a very earlier sketch during the British period, right? So, in fact, this is the temple that I was talking about, that Rajaraja I, he embarked on this mission to recover the hymns of the 63 Nainamars, or after hearing the short excerpts of the Thevaram in his court. And in fact, this is how, he sought the help of the other people, and who was, there was a priest in the temple, he sought his help. And in fact, it is believed that by divine intervention, in fact, Nambi, right? He found the presence of the scripts in the form of the leaves, half eaten by white ants, which are present in the chamber inside the second prakara wall that was there inside. So in fact, the Brahmins or the Dikshitars of that time in the temple, they supposed to actually they had disagreed with the king by saying that those works that were too divine, and that only by the arrival of the Nalvars, or the 4 saints, the Shaiv saints, Appar, Sundarar, Sambandar, and Manika Vachikar, only if they would appear, would he allow for the chambers to be opened, okay, where those palm leaf manuscripts were kept. So Rajaraja, however, he created idols of these 4 Nalvars, and he prepared for them to be brought to the temple through a procession. And Rajaraja was, he was able to rescue those palm leaf folios from this temple, and then he took them to Radishwara, and that's how those hymns were being sung all throughout the year. Okay. So this is of course, the large gopuras we saw in the earlier slide, built of stone up till cornice that I told you, and then brick capped by the barrel vaulted roof here, right? Or a shala structure, as we call it. Okay. So the sculptural program of the 4 gopuras, of course, of the 3rd prakara present, a kind of almost, microcosm of the Shaivite iconography, right, of the Chola period. For almost every form of Shiva is represented here, almost without repetition. Many are also inscribed with names. And then there has to be special mention of what you are seeing here, right? of the labeled 108 Nritya Karnas. We saw 83 in the Radishwara Temple, but here all 108 Karnas are depicted with labels at the Gopura of the third Prakara, okay, mainly the east and the west side. So although they are depicted in relief, but the sculptor is also able to kind of capture the very feminine beauty, I would say here, the facial expressions that actually almost infuse life in these granite sculptures, I would say, most aesthetically, making Bharat's Natya Shastra, in fact, immortal in stone, right? In fact, evidently, it is also a corollary to the dedication of the temple to Shiva as Lord of Dance. That's what Chidambaram Temple is about, you know? Okay. So this is the Chitta Sabha and the Kanak Sabha. So the most important part is about the veins that you see here, and they all have a lot of meaning to it, right? So it is said that the 21,600, these golden tiles covering the roof also signify 21,600 inhalations a man has in a day. So 70,000 nails over the tiles signify number of pulse beats that, a man has in a day. And in fact, I mean, likewise, there are many, many such connections here. And the most, important part of this temple is something that is so very unique only to this temple. So Chidambaram Rahasyam, that we call, by the side of the Nataraja. So there are three images that we have inside. So this is the Chidambaram Rahasyam, where he is worshipped in the invisible Akash Linga form. Okay. So below a black curtain, in fact, here you can see, in fact, which is actually red from inside, right? Here you can see this redness here. Strings of golden, bil patra, which are, left hanging here. This is what you can see here. I'm to point out that the ether is all pervasive, and this is the fifth element of the universe, and it is the place of this is where the eternal bliss dwells. So ether or Akash, we know, is perceived by hearing the Shabda, and it was the first element that came into being when this entire, universe was being conceptualized, I would say. So it is the quality of the ether, the first and the foremost in the Panchbhutas, in the process of manifestation of the, out of which, in fact, evolves the entire universe, right? And then, of course, there are other images, and most important is this portion also. In fact, this is the only temple where Shiva in his dance form as a Nataraja also is being worshipped here. And it is said that there is a story, I'm not going to get into that story, that it is here where Shiva actually came and, performed his dance here, right? So these are some other, So these are some other portions of the temple. We have I've shown you the Amma shrine is there. Then the Raj Sabha here, which has 1,000 pillared. Then the Nritya Sabha, where you have these different dance. So these are different from these are different sculptures than what we saw on the Gopura or the gateways, right? Again, you have a lot of musicians and dancers. And this is another. So the main deity here is, of course, Nataraj, and the Amma shrine is the Shiva Kami Sundari, the consort of Shiva in the dance form, right? So this, again, you have a very beautiful, the staircase with so here you have an elephant. Earlier we just had this. So here almost it is coming out as the trunk of the elephant here. Then these are, of course, on the front portion of the pillared hall, on the ceiling of the right and the left wings. You have the finest eye-catching fresco paintings of approximately 1,000 years old, which illustrate the Leelas of Shiva. In fact, the galleries surrounding the temple, which are decorated with a procession of dancers and musicians in great relief. So these are the ceiling paintings that we are looking at. The Anand Tandav, which is dated to Nayaka period, later period, all right, worshipped by the Vyagrapada and the Patanjali here. You can see it on the two sides. Yeah. Okay, so now we will talk about some, the Chola bronzes are so very popular. And I think I showed you many, many bronze sculptures when we were doing the temple iconography right in the beginning. So I thought today I will show you some other bronze sculptures that we have not seen earlier. So this, of course, is the iconic bronze sculpture, the Shiva in the Nataraj form. So I also wanted to speak about the different attributes of Shiva. We keep talking about, Acha, he has a snake, there is a moon on his Jatajut, etc. So what all these attributes, actually signify. So it is said that Trishul, in fact, which is held in his right hand, represents the three gunas, Sat, Rajas, and Tamas gun. And that is also the emblem of his sovereignty. He wields the world through these three gunas. This is what it is called. The Damru in his left hand represents the Shabda or the Brahma, the creation. As I just said, that was the first thing, the Shabda, which came first. It represents Om, from which all languages are formed. And the moon indicates that he has controlled the mind very, very perfectly. The flow of the Ganga represents the nectar of immortality. Then you have the elephant. Elephant represents symbolically pride. He's wearing the skin. No, normally I showed you that Gajantaka Shiva. Skin of the elephant denotes that he has controlled pride and sometimes ego also. Tiger represents lust, the untamed mind. His sitting on tiger skin also indicates that he has conquered lust. Okay. Holding a deer, I have told you earlier also, on one hand indicates that he has removed the playfulness or the chanchalta of the mind. All right. But as we know, deer jumps from one place to the other very, very swiftly. All right. So he has that control. His wearing of serpents also denotes wisdom and eternity. Serpents live for a very large number of years. They also sometimes represent ego. Then he is Trilochan, a three-eyed one, in the center of whose forehead is the third eye, the eye of wisdom. Okay. So these are different attributes. I thought I'll just quickly explain to you. Then especially in bronze sculptures, we have different hasta mudras. That also I spoke. The Govala, the Lola Hasta, the Kati Hasta, Gaja Hasta, Alingan, then Tarjini, Abhay, Varad, Anjali, all these, Vismay, these so many, of these Hasta mudras, the Chin mudras, the Dhyan mudras. There are very many that we come across, the Damru, the Ardhachandra Hasta, the Pataka, all these we get to know in the bronze sculptures. Okay. So bronzes or the Chol bronzes or the Chalmurtis as we call them, how did they come into being, right? So these are the mobility ensuing icons of gods of very, very different heights and features in Panchadhatu normally, an amalgamation of 5 metals, copper, zinc, tin, gold, and silver, for propagation, actually, to bring people back to their, homegrown belief. As I said, at that time, there were Jainism was very prevalent. There was Buddhism also. In fact, I will say one of these Shaiv Nainamars, he was instrumental in converting Mahendravarman from Jainism to Shaivism. All right, this is what it is known as. Okay. So most of these bronze images, they are made by lost wax method, or the Sai Pardew method as we call them. And the very important ceremony is that of Nayanunmulan and Pran Pratishtha, all right, of the idols. It is on an auspicious day, a priest actually presides over the function when the eyes of the sculptures are or a painting for that matter are opened. And that is when it imbues that qualities and attributes of a god and becomes worth of worshipping, right? So Pran Pratishtha is also this same ceremony where deities actual worshipped, and we actually, infuse, or it is imbued with life, right? So bronzes are actually more favored in temples because these are the chalmurtis or movable images, which were adorned with lot of jewelry, jewels, tastefully decorated, placed on mounts, and then taken out in procession during annual festival occasions such as the Rath Yatras. So bronzes like these were typically meant to be carried in festival processions of the gods. So their bases, as you can see here, they will usually have handles or sockets, right, for attachments to a movable platform. So the principal deities represented in bronzes are mainly Shiva in various forms, Vishnu with their spouses, Vahanas, manifestations and incarnations of in relation to Vishnu, goddess, Ganesh, Nayanamars, the Alavards, etc. etc. Now I'm keeping on talking about the Nayanamars. What are these Nayanamars? So between during the Bhakti movement, I would say 5th to 10th centuries, these are the Shaiv saints, 63 Nayanars and 12 Alvars. These are the Vaishnav saints. So as it is said that for the propagation of the religion, and they came from varied backgrounds, kings, soldiers, untouchables, and they saw deity in more human form, I would say that, in human terms. And they, in fact, they were the one who fostered the very tradition of these portable images, which were to be worshipped by the masses. So, in fact, the very, thing is that in turn, these saints also became objects of, sculpture and worship themselves. So there were a lot of these temple processions where you have the bronzes made of these saints also, which are taken out in processions. So the 4 main saints out of the 63, they are collectively known as the Kuruvars, or the religious guides. So the Appar, Sundarar, Sambandar, and Manikavachikar. All right. So in fact, biographies of these saints, and they are, there are different texts where they are recorded. So it is very, in fact, similar to Jain hagiography, right? We have Mahapuran by Jinsen, which talks about 63 Mahapurush, 24 Tirthankars, 12 Chakravartis, 9 Vasudevas, 9 Prativasudevas, 9 Balrams. So altogether, 63. So somehow we always find some kind of overlap between the 3 ancient religions, which I, keep coming back to. Yeah. So this, of course, is the Nayanar, Appar, the story of Appar, the great saint, who in fact converted Mahendravarman, that I have been talking about, Pallava, and who is also always represented with a sword or a uzvar, okay, almost like a kurpi, held by his hand against his shoulder. As I said, they came from varied backgrounds. And this is how he's graphically depicted in a number of bronze sculptures, right? Stand in a very, very relaxed contrapposto pose with palms joined. So contrapposto, everybody understand, where the weight of the body is, on one leg and the other leg kind of just rests very, very easily on the ground. So that's the contrapposto style. Okay. Then we have Sambandar. All right. 7th century, he was the contemporary of Appar. And so even as a 3-year-old, he had a vision of Lord Shiva and Parvati. And there is there's a small story which says that Parvati herself came down when he was left on the steps of the temple to feed him with a bowl of milk. All right. So that's why his iconography, you will always, see a bowl in one of his hands. And one finger is always pointing up, because when his parents came back after doing their darshan inside the temple, and the mother asked as to who came and fed you, and he was, pointing upwards, right? So that became then the way he's always depicted in these bronze sculptures. So he's also, these are both the ways he's depicted. This is more popular, stands in a very dancing posture on a very plain round pedestal. And all the jewelry, the Channavira, etc. Many a times he's mistaken with the Balakrishna, right? Quite a few of his attributes here will, tell us that probably he's, the icon of Krishna here. But the main difference for you to make out is, in one hand, he will normally have a bowl here, although in here he doesn't have it. Here he has a dancing posture, but one, finger is always pointing upwards. If it is Krishna's sculpture, Balakrishna, he will always have a like this, a Varad mudra, Abhay mudra. Varad is like this, either Varad or Abhay, both. But it is the Sambandhar where you will find one finger pointing upwards like this. Then this is the Manika Vachkar. In fact, it is said of 9th century, he imparted speech to the mute daughter of the king, right? And here you can see again, he's standing with one right knee slightly bent on a lotus pedestal mounted on a square base here, right? Right hand in Chinna Mudra and left hand holds a manuscript here. Very short hairs with small curls, framing the forehead, you can see. Long hanging earlobes, very simple, unornamented chain and Yajnopavit here you can see he's wearing here. And one simple, very simple bracelet on each and very short dhoti, right? Okay, so this is the iconography of Manika Vachkar. Then we have the Kannapar. So he in fact lived before the Common Era also, and son of the leader of a tribe of hunters. All right. And it is said that he actually almost chopped off his head to offer to the Shiva as such. So again, he stands in a contrapposto style here, bearded and with mustache, Anjali hands, you can see, holding flowers for worship. Hair in a very, voluminous bun at the top. And yeah, 2 short necklaces and short strings that perhaps Rudraksha beads that he's wearing. Large, round earrings. So this is how Kannappa is shown here. And this is very interesting. Saint Karaika Lammayar, the only woman saint that we have. Once she was a very beautiful woman. Right now she has lost all her flesh, a very skeletal appearance, swinging breasts from, collarbones, bony ribcage, exaggerated curve of a hunched back, right? Very calm, smiling, and face expresses her inner, peace and joy. She's normally shown with 2 symbols. She sings the glory of Shiva, her dancing lord. So that's how she used to get so lost in the worshipping or, praising the Lord that it didn't matter to her if she was wearing any clothes or not, right? Then I spoke about Chandesh or Chandikeshwara, guardian of Shiva temple. Here again, you have hair piled up upon his head in the actually almost in the imitation of Shiva's matted locks. So this is the saint I was talking about, that when you are, passing by his shrine alongside the main building temple, you rub your palms in front of Chandesh shrine to show that you're not taking anything from it, because he's supposed to be the caretaker of the Shiva shrine. Then, of course, these bronzes, the original idea of these were they're the Utsav Murtis for worship. So here you can see the Abhishek, which is happening, the illustration during the Nataraj Utsav, Arunachaleshwara Temple. This is, and here you have Nainamars in procession at the Kapaleshwara Temple festival in Mylapore, Chennai. Okay, now I can show you some video if it's going to work. Let me see. I just thought it will give you some flavor, yeah? And let me know if you can hear the sound. No? Wait. The sound is not coming, huh?
Yes, ma'am. Sound is not audible.
Okay, let me try. Hannah. It's a beautiful film. Just very, very small. Let me pause and stop share, and I will do again. Hannah. I have done share sound. Why is it not working? I'm sorry, the sound just doesn't seem to. Anyway, you will get some, idea about these Utsav Murtis, the bronze sculptures that are being carried on this. This is how the processional deities first, they are all kinds of abhishek or the worship is being done before they are taken out in a procession, right? So actually, basically, this is what I wanted to show you. Yeah. And look at the heavy ornaments that they are made to wear. Very beautiful. Okay, I think that's okay. You can always go on the net and see some of these. There are a whole lot of them. Yeah. So with this, I think I will conclude my lecture today. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू मैडम, वो बहुत बहुत
I'm sorry about the sound. I don't know. I think there was something wrong. The sound was not coming. Yeah.
आपके लिए हम लोग बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करते हैं अपने सभी श्रोताओं की ओर से और अपने ट्रस्ट की ओर से, अपने संस्थान की ओर से। इसी तरह से लोग जोड़ते रहें। और जैसा कि पहले हमने कहा था कि 8 तारीख को हम लोगों का ये कंक्लूडिंग सेशन रहेगा और पूरे 16 जो हमारे व्याख्यान हुए हैं और होंगे, उन सबके संदर्भ में जो महत्वपूर्ण प्रश्न हैं उनको हम लोग कवर करने की कोशिश करते हैं।
So I've shared my email ID. Please, you can write your questions. Yeah. So that in the last, on the last day, I will try to answer if, I know that.
खुद ही आप मतलब चयन कर सकते हैं उनको। और हमारे जो डॉक्टर जीतू भाई जी हैं, जेवी शाह जी, वो हमारे सत्र की अध्यक्षता करेंगे। और भी अगर कोई विद्वान जुड़ना चाहेंगे तो हम उन लोगों को भी अवसर करेंगे। साथ में हमारा जो अगला व्याख्यान होगा 29 मार्च को होगा अब, और यह होयसाल पीरियड पर है। होयसाल पीरियड, हाँ, तो उसके संदर्भ में जो प्रमुख मंदिर हैं उन पर हमारा यह व्याख्यान केंद्रित होगा। तो इस तरह से हम इतिहास के साथ ही साथ पुरातत्व का भी ज्ञान करते जाएंगे। और हम सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात होती है किसी भी व्याख्यान सुनने देखने के बाद जिज्ञासा बढ़े। हम लोगों की जिज्ञासा हमारे मन में आए कि काश हम भी वहां पर जा पाए, जाए, तो उसकी सफलता सबसे ज्यादा मानी जाती है। और ऐसा हो रहा है, ऐसा मैं मानता हूँ।
Yeah. I have, in fact, the beauty of, this course is I have almost visited all the temples. Yeah. And that's why I can so well relate to them and I can so well admire them, and it doesn't end there. I can, keep going back to these temples over and over again. Yeah.
इसके साथ ही हम लोग एक सूचना और आप लोगों को देना चाहेंगे कि हमारा जो भोगीलाल लहरचंद इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडोलॉजी है, यह एक मासिक व्याख्यान माला भी प्रारंभ किया है। और पिछले माह आपने जीतू भाई साहब का व्याख्यान सुना था। 31 तारीख को इस माह आप प्रोफेसर GC त्रिपाठी जी का व्याख्यान सुनेंगे। तो उसके लिए आप लोग इसमें हम लोग लिंक शेयर कर देंगे अगली बार, आप उसमें एक रजिस्ट्रेशन करके और उसमें जरूर सुने, क्योंकि उसमें पांडुलिपियों के संपादन का अनुभव, एक त्रिपाठी जी 85 ईयर्स ओल्ड, हमारे संस्थान में 12 साल तक अभी निदेशक पद पर रहे हैं। इसके पहले राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत संस्थान में 25 साल से अधिक प्रिंसिपल रहे हैं और अंतरराष्ट्रीय ख्याति के मूर्धन्य विद्वानों में, संस्कृत के ही तो साथ में सभी प्राच्य विद्याओं के अंतरराष्ट्रीय, इस तरह से उनको एक प्रकार से चलता फिरता एनसाइक्लोपीडिया आप कह सकते हैं। तो इस तरह से एक अंतर ख्याति विद्वान का व्याख्यान सुनने का भी आप लोग लाभ लें, ऐसी मैं कामना करता हूँ। और साथ ही अपने संस्थान के अध्यक्ष श्री निर्मल भोगीलाल जी, जिन्होंने सबसे पहले इस कार्यक्रम को प्रायोजक के रूप में व्यक्तिगत रुचि ली, उसी तरह से श्री राजकुमार जी ओसवाल जी, जो कि हमारे भोगीलाल लहरचंद इंस्टीट्यूट के प्रेसिडेंट भी हैं, और श्री धनेश जी, जो कि पहले हमारे यहाँ के कोषाध्यक्ष हुआ करते थे उनके परिवार में, और इसी तरह से जो मातु श्री राजकुमारी सुमेर चंद जी का परिवार है, उन लोगों ने इसको प्रोत्साहन दिया, उनके प्रति भी हम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देते हैं। और सबसे ज्यादा जो धन्यवाद की पात्रा है वो मैम है हमारी, और उनके प्रति भी आप सभी की तरफ से और हम सब की तरफ से सभी श्रोताओं को हम लोग बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करते हैं। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।